Welcome to Giants Nation. I'm your host, Bobby Skinner, and today we have Dan Duggan on the show to recap Giants Mini Camp. We go through whether it's Jaxson Dart, his role in the roster, Russell Wilson, basically just finishing, putting the bow on Giants spring practices as they take this 5-week break before training camp. So, always a good time with Duggan. He's not going to give you any fluff. He gives you what he thinks and what he knows, and not trying to guess on what he may not know. So good stuff with that. Not going to take too much of your time. This episode is brought to you by a special person, and that is Victoria Hughes. That is actually the New Jersey Devils hockey players, Jack and Luke. That's actually their sister. She went to patreon.com/Giants Nation. This is going to be a slow 5 weeks, obviously, for the show. Actually, not for the show, but because people aren't going to be as plugged in. So go if you want to support while not having to do whatever, like patreon.com/Giants Nation. The $10 a month tier or $9.99 would be greatly appreciated. That's the tier that keeps the show alive. If it's just a $6 one, that's also cool too. Patreon.com/Giants Nation. We'll send you stickers in the mail. We do t-shirt raffles. And then, once the season kicks off, there's going to be some exclusive content like the weekly film review. So, patreon.com/Giants Nation. You'll be glad you did. And before we get into it, Dan Duggan, this episode is brought to you by SeatGeek. I am so excited for training camp. Now, I don't need SeatGeek tickets with this, and this is becoming a common theme with these episodes is I'm talking about things that aren't on SeatGeek. But you know what is on SeatGeek? And I was thinking about it, that maybe I'll go see the Rays play in Tampa. They're playing in the Yankees minor league stadium. The Yankees play like minor leaguers, so maybe I'll go just watch the Rays. I should have went and watched the Panthers win the Stanley Cup because it's just even though I'm a Devils fan, I'm very much a fan of Florida just dominating hockey. It makes me laugh. But again, whatever I'm using to get tickets, I'm using, or whatever thing I'm trying to get tickets for, I'm using SeatGeek, which is why I wanted to give this sponsor today, SeatGeek, a huge shout out. With over 28 million downloads, SeatGeek is the #1 rated ticketing app. There are more than 70,000 events listed on SeatGeek, including concerts, sports, festivals, and more. The NFL schedule came out about a month ago, so obviously the NFL's around the corner. You can get those MLB, and then maybe you could get the last NBA Finals game, or maybe there's 2 more. We'll see. So again, you can pull up the app on your phone. Look, it just popped up. Tigers at Rays. So SeatGeek has your back. Each ticket is rated on a scale of 1 to 10, so you're getting a good deal. So look for the green dots. Green means good. Red means bad. Plus, every ticket is backed by their buyer guarantee. And I came through for you guys. You can use code Bobby2025 for 10% off your next set of tickets at SeatGeek. That's 10% off any tickets with promo code Bobby2025. Make sure you click the link in the description to download the app and have the code automatically added to your account so you can use it later. Thank you, SeatGeek. You'll be glad you did. And here's Dan Duggan. I would now welcome on Dan Duggan of The Athletic, finishing up Giants Mini Camp. Dan, something that you pointed out last week that I thought was pretty interesting that I want to lead off with is Deonte Banks. You guys talked to the DB coaches today. They have a DB and a corner coach this year. What's the dynamic at cornerback, too, with Deonte Banks and Cordale Flott? Because obviously, they weren't happy with him, with a few things last year, fired Henderson and then brought in these new coaches. And then now they're splitting reps. What do you see from the dynamic there?
Yeah, no, I'm always a big believer in trust your eyes, especially this time of year more than your ears, because everyone's in the best shape of their life. Everybody's locked in has kind of been the phrase of the spring, that Evan Neal's locked in, Jalen Hyatt's locked in, Deonte Banks is locked in. Like, okay. But so the coaches are obviously still going to put the guys out there based on, who's earned it, who they think is the best player. And it's a little tricky in OTAs because we're only here 1 out of every 3 practices. So you might see something in week 1. It's like, oh, that's interesting. You come back in week 2, it could be totally different. You come back in week 3, it's the same. So you're trying to draw trends that, you're not there to verify every day. But since we were here last week and then twice this week, it's no longer like a secret that Banks and Flott were splitting reps as the, cornerback 2 with the starters. And the reason why I said you can't always make that conclusion up in one practice, because I think the first time we saw it, Banks just had like a lighter workload. So sometimes they just give guys, sort of a maintenance day, whatever it may be. But then when you start taking reps with the 2s, it's like, well, you're not managing his reps. You're actually just giving his starting reps to another player. So that's what kind of became clear. And so again, so talking to the coaches, I only talked to Mark Emanuel. I didn't talk to the new cornerback coach, Jeff Burris, but I don't believe either one of them like really said, like Deonte's done anything to disappoint us. I think they're more just saying it's an open competition. Even Daboll said it's about giving a guy like Flott an opportunity, and because he always tries to say like, well, everything's a competition. And then I actually was one asking the question, said it's like, well, Paulson Adebo doesn't take any reps for the twos. You can go down the list of guys who aren't battling for their starting position. Deonte Banks clearly is, because again, he's sacrificing reps for Cordale Flott, and he's also getting reps for the twos. So it's not just a situation where like Greg Van Roten isn't really practicing, but he's not getting any reps with the twos. It's just he's sitting out a lot of team periods. But so where's that leave things? I think it's a smart approach. Like Deonte Banks, hasn't earned anything. He does not deserve to get handed his starting job based on how last year went. I mean, I think obviously they kind of tried to stick with him a little bit last year, and they came to the head when they benched him in Pittsburgh. Didn't really have any other options. So I think this year maybe they feel like, let's at least make him earn it. I'm sure they want Deonte Banks to be the starting corner. He's a more talented player than Cordale Flott. But there's nothing wrong in May and June of not just handing it to him. And then obviously as you get into July and August, you hope that his performance, his attitude, all that stuff, clears whatever threshold they've set, and he wins that job and you feel good about him. But I think that that's just where it's at now, where he didn't do enough to earn it last year, and rather than just handing it to him, giving him the scholarship, they're making him go out and, compete with Cordale Flott for that spot.
Do you think it's an actual battle? Like how, because he's got a good battle because Cordale Flott is the ultimate like terrible training camp, and then you get to the games. He's the only player who like just looks a little better than what he gets hyped up in camp. Or is there still some unhappiness with Deonte Banks? I remember a first round player this time last year who was slated to be a starter when, we talked after mini camp and stuff, and Evan Neal. And then it comes out, I was like, yeah, they're not super happy with how his work ethic, and there's distrust on both sides. Like, is there anything still there? Because they were unhappy with Banks at certain points, and Banks was unhappy with them too last year.
Yeah, well, the complication with Neal, obviously, with the injuries, too. He wasn't healthy at this time last year. He wasn't really even healthy until so deep into camp that he never really could have competed for a starting job. So with Banks obviously being healthy, I would say the ball's gone in his court. As you mentioned, they did, make the change. The only change they made on the staff was at the defensive backs coach. I think clearly that was a little bit of scapegoating. Like, well, it was Joe Henderson's fault for not getting through to him or whatever it may be. So I think they're, probably a little bit of a clean slate there. So I don't know that there's any lingering bad blood. I mean, if you're the Giants, you still need him. I mean, he's still the second most talented corner on your roster. And if you're Deonte Banks, I mean, your career's kind of at a crossroads here. If you lose a competition to Cordale Flott and they're a backup, what does that mean for, your future, for your second contract? So I would assume even if he does have any issues with the staff, he should be able to put those aside. But I don't think there's any real like personal issues there. I think it's really just a matter of he needs to prove himself. And, he hasn't really had to. He came in as a first-round pick, right in the starting lineup. Last year, didn't really do anything to earn it, but by default was the CB1. So now it's like, all right, now we're in year 3. And again, I use that word crossroads, where it's like he needs to go out and consistently prove it, because at least I think in their eyes, they feel like we can play Cordale Flott. I'm sure they don't want him to be the number 2 corner, but we can do that. So at least we have that to dangle of Banks. Like, hey, if you don't, perform day in and day out the way we expect, you could be on the bench. Again, I don't think that's how it'll play out, but I think that's some teeth to that threat, I would say, at this point.
Yeah, and I kind of like the approach, because Banks isn't like your typical first rounder who you're not happy with, where it's like, all right, well, this is over. Let's see if we can salvage anything. With Banks, like, I still think there's a path to being an advantage at corner too, but again, he hasn't proven that, so make him go out there and earn it every day. So, but again, something interesting that you get out of there. Is Jaxson Dart quarterback 2, or will he spend camp working between both? Or has he like kind of solidified himself as the second quarterback on the roster?
That's a good question, and that's one where, again, like coming here every day in camp, I think will help reveal that, because they would kind of mix the rotation at quarterback. Like early in the OTAs, they were even giving guys like Winston and Dart like 1 or 2 reps here and there with the ones. They kind of stopped doing that. It was like, all right, we're gonna give Russ all the first team reps, which, trust me, you get out for camp and you're trying to chart practices, it makes life a lot easier, because it's super annoying when you do like 3 reps and then, wait, Dart was in there for that one. So like Russ will be the starter. Maybe they'll mix Dart in here or there, but he's the number 1. The number 2 one's a little interesting, because what they did yesterday was they did like one period where Jameis was the 2s and DeVito was the 3s, and Dart didn't even get any reps. And then the next period, they went back to Dart as the 2s, Jameis with the threes, and DeVito didn't get any reps. So they're still kind of like, I think, probably figuring that out. I mean, granted, if Daboll, has a detailed plan, he's not going to share it. And he has indicated he does have this grand plan. But my expectation, my thought, as I'm kind of kicking this around myself for what I'm going to write, kind of coming out of minicamp, I don't know that the practice reps is necessarily going to be indicative of who's the number 2 quarterback on Sundays. Because, I think one of the benefits of Jameis, the guy's played a ton of football. He's started games. He's been a backup. He's done all that. So he might not need the same amount of reps for them to feel comfortable with him. That if something happens week 1, Russell Wilson, rolls his ankle in the first quarter and you got to put somebody in there, I think they would still have it that Jameis is positioned to be that guy. But that doesn't mean all through camp he's going to get, the Tyrod Taylor, Drew Lock level number 2 reps. I think that will either be split or it might even skew toward Dart. Again, I like Jameis would say he's getting a raw deal here, but like if he's probably going to be expected to be the number 2 while not getting the typical number 2 reps. But again, that's why, there's value to a guy like that. He is a veteran. He's been around. So that's how my read is right now. And that's just a gut feeling. Again, Daboll hasn't said that. And once we get into camp, we'll probably have a better handle. But I think it's more like Dart will get the number 2 reps. But at least to start the season, I would be very surprised if Jameis isn't the number 2 with Dart as the emergency quarterback.
Which I kind of like, because sometimes a team will draft a quarterback where they have a guy who's going to start and they just treat him like any other quarterback in practice. When in reality, like their careers rely on Dart being the guy, long term. Where I like giving him I think he should be getting basically every preseason snap, except for like their dress rehearsal. Like Dart should be getting that. And like you said, Jameis is getting a raw deal. But guess what? That's what happens when you play like a backup quarterback in your career. You're going to get a raw deal at times because you're meshing with the number 2 team isn't as important as developing, a first round quarterback that all of their careers, depend on. And, the Giants hopefully for the next 10 years depends on that guy. So getting him ready is the priority outside of, the starting team. But it will be interesting to see, like you said, they put Dart in the first team. Will be interesting to see if they do that in training camp, because training camp, you don't really mess around with too much stuff. You kind of just go out there. Last offseason practice for a rookie QB. So last time I'll ask this until the Giants' next, rookie QB, however many years from now it is. How was these last 2 practices, minicamp wise, performance?
I would say just overall in the spring, like it was fine. It was solid. Like he didn't do anything that made you like, holy crap, like wow, how did this guy become a first round pick? Like what did they see? He also wasn't like, oh my goodness, like they got a guy here who Russ is going to be on the bench by the open. Like I think there was this kind of standard ups and downs. When you see him physically, like he doesn't blow you away with anything. Like he's, not the tallest guy. He's pretty solid. His arm is good. Like it's not like, oh my goodness, this guy's, launching 70-mile-an-hour missiles, 70-yard missiles down the field, anything like that. I would say like the thing he does really well is his touch. Like on some of these fades. And they do a lot of red zone stuff at this time of year too. I kind of hate OTAs, if I'm being honest, as I'm talking to, because it's just like, Darius Slayton always, puts in good perspective. He's like, it's great for wide receivers because it's just like a passing camp and stuff. But it's just really hard to make evaluations on games because they're doing a lot of 7-on-7 this year, a lot in the red zone. So, someone was getting on me today on Twitter, like I didn't record Dart's touchdown passes. And well, the ball was on the 2-yard line. It's 7-on-7. Like if you just, you just lob the ball in front of you and get a touchdown. But so that's why it's a little hard to make like a full evaluation. Of course, you couldn't at this point, no matter what. But I would say he has said he's got really good touch on those fades in the red zone. There's times we held the ball forever, and I think that's totally normal and to be expected from a rookie quarterback. He threw a couple picks today. And I always go back to like Peyton Manning always talks about it on the Manning cast, how he threw 1 million picks his rookie year. And now we're talking about, spring practices. And Dart even said after practice today, like, I think the biggest thing is learning kind of, you can't make that throw here. The athletes are too good. The window's closed too fast. But like, so it's kind of, I even feel silly, like we're recording that he had 2 interceptions. Cause like, well, that might be a good thing. Cause you realize, okay, if I can't throw that pass against Raheem Lane in, mini camp practice number 2, I certainly can't throw it, in a regular season game when the, some all pro safeties back there. But so, yeah, like I would just say he looked probably what you'd expect. Like there was nothing like, oh my goodness, good or bad. So that's why I think I'm looking forward to get closing the chapter on this, getting to camp. We'll see him every day. We'll see him in more competitive situations. We'll see him in the joint practices. We'll see him in the preseason games. I think that's when we can have, more solid evaluations. Now it's really just kind of like first impression type stuff.
Yeah, I hate it too, but it's a first round rookie QB, so I'm trying to pull in his like like I remember that Jalen Hyatt touchdown on the first OTA in the red zone. I mean, I downloaded that video. Like he went frame by frame to like try and break it down, just because again, it's rookie first round QB, and I think I'm gonna give a disclaimer for training camp. Of like, I understand he's a rookie QB. I understand he's gonna make mistakes, but I am gonna talk about what happened. I'm not gonna ignore it. So just that's a trigger warning that if he plays bad, I will talk about it. I won't skip Jaxson Dart's performance on those days.
Right. And it's also funny though, because he's a first round QB, but he's not like, if they picked Jaden Daniels last year and he came in and was like this, you knew he was gonna be the starter. You kind of know he's not gonna be the starter. So that kind of colors a little bit, like he's not out there at the ones very much. So you're watching him, throw to Jordan Bly and Bo Collins and stuff. So it's like it just makes it a little weirder to try to like get a full handle on it, because again, he is playing a lot with the 2s and 3s. So that part, even when Daniel Jones was here, he obviously was behind Eli. So, he wasn't going to be the starter, at the end of the year, but I think 3 weeks before he was the starter. But so it's a little bit weird to have a quarterback come in who they're basically telling you is not going to start. So he's not getting the full first team rep. So that makes it a little murkier too, I feel like, to evaluate it this time of year.
To keep it on, to finish off the Dart stuff, this topic died out once the draft was over. And this was the last time I'll, talk with a reporter until training camp. How is the dynamic of Schoen, Daboll, Brandon Brown, and others after there was disagreements on quarterback evaluations in the draft? They didn't come out flat out and say it, but all the rumor, all the the tea leaves and everything that came out. Is there anything you've learned about that dynamic in the first time where they maybe weren't as collaborative as past years?
Like I don't know that anything concrete has come out. I mean, I do think the notion that Dart was Daboll's guy is like just been confirmed over and over and over again. You saw that video. That kind of, I don't know where it even came from, where Dart had like that camera crew following around a draft night and that private conversation with Daboll, which I'm sure Daboll probably didn't want out, where he said basically, I'm betting on you. Like you got to see like how much he's invested in this kid, and that's come up time and time again during the spring. And again, like Daboll does, we were talking before, because very little obviously at the podium, but he gives a little more on Dart. I mean, he's doing everything he can to prop him up. One of the funniest things, I think it might have been like one of the first on-field workouts, might have been rookie mini camp. I can't remember what it was, but there was some song playing during stretch lines, and all the players were like into it and they liked it. Whatever it was, I'm too old to know. And Daboll went around and be like, "Oh, request this song, Dart." Like it's like he's just doing everything possible to prop him up. So I think that just confirms that, like, yes, he's fully behind this guy. For 3 years we spent like, does he really even like Daniel Jones? Is Daniel Jones his quarterback? Blah, blah, blah. Like, there's no, equivocations on it right now. Like, Jaxson Dart's his guy. I don't think that, like, it was against the wishes of Joe Schoen. But, yes, there certainly was, I guess, varying views of the quarterback class in that room. But at the end of the day, I think Schoen and Daboll, obviously are hitching their wagon at Dart. So I don't think between them there was any serious friction or anything like that. But I can't say definitively. I probably need to do some reporting on that, just to kind of poke around now that the dust has settled a little bit. Because obviously right after the draft, everyone's like, "Oh no, this was our guy." Everyone was saying, "Oh, Dart's been our guy since like November." It's like, even though Schoen didn't even go to see him play till the Egg Bowl, so it probably is a good time to circle back on that. But yeah, I mean, I would say my biggest takeaway is just that the idea that Daboll is fully on board has only been further confirmed based on what we've seen this spring.
What's the most important thing you've learned from 3 OTA and 2 minicamp practices?
I would say this, like, I don't know if it qualifies as learned, but like it was a lot of talk, and then seeing it, like this pass rush has a chance to be like really good. And I'm gonna go somewhere like positive. I know I'm usually like a little skeptical, but like Abdul Carter like really looks the part. Like he looks like he could be like a like the obvious comparison is Micah Parsons, and like the fact they move him around the way Parsons moved around. You could see that type of impact. It would not shock me at all. Now, again, we're still talking about practices in the spring, there's no contact, but it doesn't matter because they just think there's a way he moves. Like we had Kayvon Thibodeau in here as a top 5 pick a couple years ago. You didn't watch him on the field and like, oh my gosh, this guy just is a freak. He's talented, whatever. But like Abdul Carter, it's just like, it looks easy for him. And he's so explosive and he's big. And again, the fact that they can move him around, I just think he's going to be such a weapon. So I think when you factor in him, and then you got Thibodeau and Burns on the edge, and then we haven't even really seen Dex on the field. I mean, I think we all kind of know what he can do. Like that foursome could really, really be trouble. And so I think that's the part that if there's anything to come away from excited about this spring, again, it's not like some I can't believe it. We kind of know the names, we know the talent level, but that is probably the group that is like, if this team is going to surprise people and win 10 games, it's going to be because that group is just absolutely game wreckers and dominant.
Yeah, like my thing for sure, where I'm very excited about that too, is like Shane Bowen get this defense to third down, because like that is going to be so hard. Like I just can't imagine being a center and you have Dexter Lawrence and Abdul Carter on both sides of you. Like how do you set a protection for that? Like, Abdul Carter shared that clip, which he ended up deleting, that, made the rounds. Like, I understand it's backups and stuff, but like seeing those guys and like, oh yeah, Dexter Lawrence will be out there too. It's just exciting. And I do agree with you where Carter just moves different. He moves different than Brian Burns, who moves extremely well. Like he just moves at a different level. And, that's why I kind of wanted him, like just from watching a handful of plays in November. Like this guy just moves different. I want him. I thought you were going to answer that question. Mike Kafka's the play caller.
Yeah. I mean, that certainly is one of the probably more notable developments. Yeah, because you go back, it started at the beginning of the offseason. That whole weird thing where Maris said he brought it up, and Daboll keeps saying that he brought it up. But I really thought at that point, the fact that Daboll made it seem like it was just something that came up, I really thought he was going to stick to calling the plays, because I think, the idea, he took it last year because he wanted to have control. I didn't think he would cede it as he's going into another pivotal year. I wonder if taking the quarterback in the first round maybe changes the dynamic. Like, let's say they traded for Stafford, maybe he still calls the plays, but the fact that he's going to probably want to spend a lot of time with Dart, maybe that influences it. That's a question I'll try to ask in a press conference. He won't answer, and then I'll see if I can find something out kind of behind the scenes. But I do wonder if that had any influence in it. Of course, he still won't say what it's going to be, but Kafka's done it every single open practice this spring. And you go back to past years when it was up in the air, they didn't alternate. It wasn't like Kafka did it for a week, then Daboll did it for a week. It was whoever was the play call in week one, he did it all offseason. So barring some drastic change, during this 5-week break where Daboll changed his mind, I assume Kafka will come into camp as a play caller and remain the play caller. Then I think the key is just let him call the plays, though. Don't do the thing where you're yanking it and taking it away and giving it back. And so I think that's where they landed on. But yeah, that is notable. But I was trying to go positive here and just hype up the pass rush.
Well, I don't think that's not positive. The fact that I think hopefully it's
not exciting though, is it? Like I think Abdul Carter might have 15 sacks is more exciting than Mike Kafka's back to calling plays.
Yeah, most exciting thing is definitely Abdul Carter. And again, just I cannot wait to watch one-on-ones. I love Andrew Thomas, but I hope he beats Andrew Thomas on the first day of those. Like I'm just excited to watch Abdul Carter out there and play. Speaking of Andrew Thomas and guys in practice, is there anything to Malik Nabers not practicing at all? Because we're not talking about a guy who ended the season, with missing games. And I thought Connor Hughes made a good point. It's like he did participate in the Pro Bowl, so like he could participate in things that weren't important. And they have new quarterbacks, and that stuff matters. Like, is there anything to that? Because I wouldn't want to have Malik Nabers out there go, 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 go. But it is a little odd that he's not participating in anything.
It's strange. Because I think there was a point there where early in the offseason program, I wonder if he was even here because they were not showing any pictures of him, but then maybe it was just because he wasn't participating. But once we got here, obviously that first day, it came out that he has the toe and it's lingering from college. And yet, he went through all the offseason stuff last year with no limitations. I know it popped up on the injury report. I think it was the Colts week, so it certainly didn't hold him back at the end of the year. And then, as you said, Connor made a good point. Went down to the Pro Bowl. If you think he had some sort of lingering injury that was a concern, you might not be, doing flag football and doing flips into the foam pit and all the stuff he was doing. So, yeah, it's odd. I understand that they're going to be cautious with, prominent players who are coming off injuries. But, yeah, his is a little different. It wasn't like he had surgery or had an injury that shut him down for the last 3 weeks and they're building him back up. Because, again, he finished the season and, again, went to the Pro Bowl. And I know it's messing around, but still, if it's your toe, running is running. So, yeah, I don't know. I would say it's odd. And, again, to your point that they do have new quarterbacks, I think anyone could argue it'd be beneficial, even if it is just the spring, to at least be out there, developing chemistry, developing timing with Wilson, with Dart. Listen, Daboll said today he doesn't think it's going to be a problem for camp. So, when he has 1,500 yards at the end of the season, we're going to expect probably a toe injury to pop up next spring too. But it's going to be something to monitor in camp. Like, he's going to be out there every day. Is this going to be a workload management thing through the summer? That's the answer we don't know. my read is if it's not serious, he should be out there every day in camp at least. I mean, maybe they gave him a little extended break here in the spring, but if he's missing practice in camp, then it'll be a concern. As of right now, I think I'll just go with this a little bit strained for the second-year player. Kind of got the spring off with sort of a nebulous injury here.
To get, like you mentioned, wanted to be a little more positive. Are you getting infected by Russell Wilson? Because I'm starting to, where, obviously they're only sharing positive clips and stuff like that, but like, you hear good things out of these OTA reports and the way the other players talk about them, and you do like, you know what, like the guy did win a Super Bowl at one point, and I love the Manning cast. My favorite Manning cast interview ever was Russell Wilson. Are you getting infected by Russell Wilson fever at all?
I am a big Manning cat fan. That was like the first game too. Like went to overtime and he like stayed on. It was like talking through 2-minute drills and stuff. That was cool. I laughed when you asked that question though, because you're talking about like setting me up for a positive answer, and here comes Debbie Downer here. No, I'm just too jaded and I've been doing this too long. Like I don't know. I mean, listen, I will say every player to a man has said it. So maybe I'm just like I'm looking at this wrong. I'm just too bitter. But like I don't know. It sounds like kind of fluff. Like I don't know. Like he's just such a good leader. He like I don't know. He's been other places in they've lost games. Like it's not like it's just like he has this magical potion that just everywhere he goes he wins. And obviously he won a lot in his career. And Pittsburgh went well until it didn't go well. But I don't know. I also just feel like his personality seems to kind of grate on people too. So maybe the first impression comes on really strong, but he's had, this was 14 in 5 years. He's had some kind of like ugly endings and, sort of each of the 3 previous spots. So, and obviously there's a lot of drama in Seattle. It seemed like late in his time there, but there's obviously some big personality. So, I think that there's a little bit of a breath of fresh air. I'm never big on like the dump on the guy at the door. So I think everyone likes to just like, oh, like Daniel Jones, like he was the worst at everything. It's like Daniel Jones was, I always said I was one of his biggest critics. He was great on the intangible. So this idea that like, oh, they finally have like a leader at quarterback. Like no one was ever criticizing Daniel Jones' leadership. Now you can say, Russ's resume and his background lends more credibility, and he's kind of been there, done that. Obviously you mentioned Super Bowl winner. I could buy that to an extent, but like it wasn't like they had some Zach Wilson wasn't the quarterback here for the last 6 years and was just like a complete, like irresponsible guy running the show. Like so I don't know. I think it's a little overstated, but listen, that's what the spring is for. We get all excited. Jalen Hyatt's put on 50 pounds of muscle, and Evan Neal's moving better than ever. Like that's what the spring is. I'm gonna have to see it to believe it with Russ, only because again, I just look at his recent track record. It's been pretty spotty. You can say it's been better than Daniel Jones, won't argue that, but it's not like he's been this like amazing quarterback, and everywhere he goes, just his positive attitude just uplifts everything. Like it's been, he's had some pretty tough spots in his last couple of years.
Yeah, I'm not sitting here saying like, this. I'm not even talking about just the intangible stuff where I have talked myself into a little bit of the, like, in his games, they were 13th in scoring. And obviously there were some stinkers at the end, but there were some games that put up points. And I don't think anyone's the biggest Arthur Smith fan in the world. And like the Steelers, as good as a team as they are, and they continue to win games every year, their offensive weapons last year kind of sucked. Like I think George Pickens is a little bit overrated. And that's when he's, on his, the top of his game. And then outside that is Calvin Austin and Van Jefferson. Like I think there's an increase there and hopefully an advantage of play calling. If there's not, then I think the Giants have bigger issues. Where I'm like, all right, maybe it's, again, I think they're not going to win a lot of games, the schedule stuff, but where like this offense could be like the best offense they've had in like 5 years or so, which is a low bar, but I don't know. I've gotten a little bit excited for Russ and infected by all the answers and stuff.
Well, and I think the one thing is, and I've heard you say this, like, I think you may have said it for Hyatt in particular, he's the best quarterback for Hyatt. He's like the best quarterback for like this wide receiver core, except for probably Wan'Dale Robinson. But like, I think you're going to have some games where they do probably score 38 points because it's going to be bombs away and they're going to, hit on a few of those deep balls because he still does that, as well as ever. Like, I mean, the moon balls, like they are pretty to watch. And you just look at the skill set of the receivers with Slayton, with Nabers. And then again, I don't think Hyatt is going to have this like monster breakout season, but I think you'll have like his rookie year where he has a game or 2 or 3 or 4 where he does, make a 75-yard touchdown catch. And I think that's what Russ brings, where obviously they lacked that with Jones big time. So like, I think that there is an element of just like an explosiveness that this offense has desperately needed that he does bring. So I could see getting excited about that for sure. I just like, I don't know, down in, down out. I just don't know. Cause you watch him play, like he's not the athletic athletic guy. He used to be early in his career. He takes a lot of sacks, holds the ball forever. Like, I think there's going to be some rough patches too, for sure. But yeah, I think it'll be a more fun offense to watch just because you are going to have more of those big plays, with Nabers, Slayton, and Hyatt in particular.
Yeah, I guess that's what it is that even if it's not good, it's like a very different type of bad where the past, 5 years has been the lack of explosives where with Russ, you're at least going to get that. Couple more things before we go. Is there anything on Bobby Okereke? I know he hasn't been practicing of late. Dunleavy came on a couple weeks ago, and he likes to leave little crumbs when he hears stuff. He kind of mentioned that he might be he fell out of favor with either the front office or coaching staff. He wouldn't answer. Is there anything with Bobby Okereke or no?
I mean, I know that was the talk, he was around the combine, but then he kind of survived the, roster turnover period where if you're going to trade him or release him, I don't know if they really could release him cap wise, but if they were going to move him, it would have happened obviously long ago. But his spring felt interesting because, he had a herniated disc in his back at the end of last year. I don't think he had a surgery or anything. That's one of those injuries that, they kind of like Nabers, heals with time. But he was out on the field at the start of the offseason program. So and I think he spoke even. So it seemed like he was past it. And then we haven't seen him in like the last 4 times we've been out here, which, spans over like 3 weeks. So I don't know, that's definitely something to monitor. As far as falling out of favor, again, like I think that they're going to have to roll them unless it becomes like a Blake Martinez situation where we find out like after the fact that like, oh, like he had really fallen out of favor. I don't think we're going to get to that point because I still think he's a lot better than the other options they have at that position. But yeah, with the add in the injury, it's a little unclear kind of what's going on with that. And, anyone knows like back injuries are a little tough too. Like as a middle linebacker and slamming into guys 45 times a game, like how is that going to hold up? We don't know. So yeah, I don't know. He's probably someone on the back burner I'll be keeping an eye on in camp, but I would expect he's going to come in. He's going to have the green dot. He's going to be, playing every snap until he's not. So I haven't heard anything that indicates that'll change.
All right, final question is, and this may be no answer to this because it's the first time in a long time there's been a combined year 4 GM and head coach. Is there a surprise cut candidate? Because that's, like you said, you don't like to look at performance for OTAs and stuff, but you can look at depth chart. And is there any surprise cut that you could see?
Yeah, no, you talk about year 4. This is my first time ever. I know that last year was my first year 3. I came in McAdoo's first year. So yeah, this is uncharted territory. I always struggle with surprise cuts because I'm like so in the weeds with it. I don't know like if what fans would consider surprise.
Yeah, surprise for the people who aren't checking in OTA updates. Because I had to tell myself that. I'm like, well, there's really no surprise cuts because the PPE. I was like, you know what? 6 years ago, I didn't know what a fucking PPE escalator is. For the people who don't know what that is.
Yeah. So I mean, if you that's a good way to probably segue into it because could Daniel Bellinger? I don't think Daniel Bellinger get cut, but I think he could be a pay cut guy. The old, you make the 53, but they bring you in the office and say, all right, unless you take a pay cut down to the minimum, you're out of here. I think that could definitely be the case because you have Theo Johnson as tight end 1. I think he's had a quietly really good spring. I think he's a guy who we didn't touch on when we were talking about Russ. I think they've had a nice chemistry. You talk about a guy who showed a little bit of potential like up the seams last year. So that's a guy I wanted to mention there. Theo had a pretty good spring as far as making plays down the field in the seams. But you have Manhurst. So if Bellinger's your third tight end, you're really going to pay him whatever it is, $3.5 million. I think that could be a situation. But again, I don't think they would cut him because I think he would probably just take the pay cut. Kind of going around. So like I was saying, Okereke would be like a big name surprise, and I don't think that's going to happen. That would be a surprise to me. The guy I would say, and again, this might not register because again, I'm so far in the weeds, but like Jeremiah Ledbetter. He came in, he's on a cheap contract, so it wouldn't be a big deal. But I think he was just a guy who's been around the league. You looked at like, they're going to upgrade this run defense. And now we've got him, Roy Robertson Harris. And Ledbetter's kind of like, he missed the practice too. He's kind of been buried on the depth chart. Kind of feels like, who was it, Jordan Phillips last year?
Yeah.
Remember they signed him and it was, it was a cheap deal with that too. And it was like, oh, well, he's a proven run stopper. And then he didn't make it out of camp. I wouldn't be shocked. They might have to pick a guy because Robinson Harrison has been out there at the starters. It's been like him, Nacho. Dex hasn't really done anything in team drills, so that's kind of been like Elijah Chapman has been the next guy. So Elijah Chapman being over Ledbetter to me might be a surprise. But again, that's like pretty deep. Because otherwise, like, yeah, I don't think that there's as much as the depth has kind of gotten better on this roster. If you start looking around position by position, there's not like a lot of tough competitions for the last couple of spots. You look at corner, you look at safety, you look at inside linebacker. Like, there's not a lot of talent there, or at least established talent. A lot of young guys kind of duking it out for the last couple of spots. So yeah, I don't see anything like, unless something they trade Jalen High, they trade Evan Neal. But again, if you're asking me just for a cut, I guess I'd go Jeremiah Ledbetter. Even though it's kind of lame as far as identifying a surprise.
Well, that would mean a lot to me because I'm a Jeremiah Ledbetter is better than I am a Jeremiah Ledbetter is better than Roy Robertson Harris and Nacho Guy. So that one may mean something to me and me alone, which is the most important thing for my show. Yeah, I think that's it. Again, I can't really do too much with mini camp and stuff. I asked you last time for detailed plans for time off. Any detailed plans you have for these 6 weeks off?
Take 5 weeks. I don't know what happened to the Giants. They gypped us a week somehow. They started at the same time as everybody else, but somehow all these other teams were breaking for some of last week. So I don't know. I'm gonna hold that against them here in my story I'm about to write. Yeah, I always go up to Cape Cod. I'm from Massachusetts. Go up there for a couple weeks in the summer, so that'll be my time to unplug. But yeah, like I moved in like March, and I'm still like doing the final stage of that. So I'm gonna try and get that done next couple weeks, and then just hopefully unplug, and then we'll be back at it before you know it. So it's the summer break's always something you look forward to, and then it just goes by in a blink, and it's back to the grind.
Well, I'll ask you this because I don't have a van anymore. What should I do the interviews for training camp in? So I just set up the table and do it the easy way. Do you think you guys would get a kick out of like doing it in the the bed of a truck, with a table in the bed of the truck, not just sitting? Actually, I guess we could just you could just sit on the tailgate too. What would be your preferred, or maybe something I'm not thinking of for training camp interviews?
So you're coming up for all of camp?
Yeah, all of camp. Just I don't own a van anymore.
Yeah, all right. Yeah, all right. I mean, I'd like sitting on the tailgate and you get like Ford to sponsor. That should be no problem. And something like that.
I do have a Ford truck, and I would love a fucking Ford sponsor. So maybe I'll try and swing that.
I branded and have a little, kind of like the blue collar type vibe. Yeah, I think that's the way to go.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, we'll get Brett Favre. Actually, no, that's Wrangler. But I don't know. We'll figure it out. But appreciate you jumping on. We'll see you in training camp. Thanks, man.
Sounds good. Thanks, man.
All right, thank you, Dan Duggan, for jumping on the show. Really appreciate this time. So again, no beat reporter interviews until training camp starts. And I'll even go through the schedule. I'm going to give away the sauce for the next 5 weeks of the Giants Nation show, even though next week is way too early draft week. So me and Grump are going to be going through 8 players on offense for Tuesday's episode and 8 on Friday. And I'm actually doing a bonus thing. Monday, we'll have a mock draft coming out, a preseason mock draft. So I'm excited to see who the Giants pick at pick number 5. I already know. So that's the week after that. The July 4th week, you have your 4th of July mailbag. Working on interviewing somebody that you all know, but has never been on the show. Not a player. So that, and then the week after that, it's going to be like Jaxson Dart week. So I'm doing short interviews with different guys like Bengal, Trevor Sikkema, No Flags Film, and maybe some other guys. I shot my shot with a couple guys, and I didn't get responses back with some of the big heads. But we're just talking Jaxson Dart with those guys. Give them 10 minutes to, talk about their evaluation on Jaxson Dart. And then the episode that next week, I'm going to talk about a long episode on Jaxson Dart because I will have finished watching every throw 6-7 times, watching deep ball specifically, watching third down specifically, and then, doing all 22 film breakdowns of everything. So good stuff there. And then we'll have over-unders and then training camp mailback. And then we are, then we're at training camp. We're doing our Camp Battles episode. Arch Stapleton's going to join us and not a van. I don't know what we're going to do with the interview. Like you just heard with Duggan. I don't know what we're going to do. Again, maybe you do the tailgate thing. I don't know. But we'll see. I think we might just set up the table or whatever. Again, unless we get that Ford sponsorship. Shout out Ford. So excited for all that. And the Giants players. It's been a while since the Giants player has gotten in trouble in these 5 weeks. Don't do it. Just don't. Just don't. Anytime you're thinking of getting arrested, think, I don't want to get arrested. This is going to be a pain in the ass for me. This is not going to be worth it. Just happened to me 2 weeks ago. Somebody going crazy, and I'm like, I was like, is this worth getting arrested for? I'm like, you know what? It's not. So don't get arrested. All right, we'll see you guys next week for way too early draft week. Go tell Dan Duggan you enjoy on the show. Appreciate you guys, and we'll see you then. Until then, let's go Big Blue.